What's up everyone, June with the Sushi Man here, and in this video I'll be teaching you how to make salmon poke. Poke is a traditional dish from Hawaii, and if you translate the word, it means to slice or cut crosswise, hence the chopped up fish and ingredients. There's a ton of variations, especially as poke became popular around the world, but I'll be teaching you a more traditional style using shoyu as a base. And you can use the same recipe for any type of fish you're using, not just salmon. The typical one is tuna or ahi, but you can use hamachi, shrimp, octopus, whatever you like. And if you enjoy learning recipes like this and want to level up your sushi game, be sure to check out my book, How to Make Sushi at Home, a fundamental guide for beginners and beyond. It's a recipe book as well as a skill development book, that skill being sushi obviously. So whether you're training to become a professional sushi chef or just tired of paying an arm and a leg eating out at sushi restaurants, this book is for you. I'll leave details in the description below for those that are interested. Alright, now let's jump right in. Now before we continue, I just want to quickly go over why I'm using salmon for this recipe, since tuna is the one that's more traditional and common. But finding quote-unquote sushi grade or sashimi grade tuna can be tough depending on where you live. And by the way, the whole sushi grade thing is really just a marketing term, but anyways, finding high quality fresh salmon tends to be a lot easier because of how common it is. And why not use it? It tastes so good. Alright, back to the video. So first, let's go over the supplies and tools we need. We have our cutting board. Make sure it's nice and clean. Next, we'll need a sharp knife. I'm going to be using my Misono 440 series gyuto here. The gyuto is an all-around chef knife that's good for cutting all different types of stuff. You can cut boneless fish like this and pretty much whatever vegetables you want. It's well balanced, stays sharp, and easy to maintain. I'll leave a link in the description below if anyone's in the market for a new knife. This one's pretty sweet. We're also going to need a spoon, just a regular spoon to mix everything. Speaking of mixing, we're going to need a bowl. Medium to large, of course depending on how much poke you're making. We'll also need some measuring spoons to measure out the ingredients for the poke sauce. Now I have all these measured out already, but honestly when I make poke, I don't really measure anything at all. So I rarely use these. I usually just pour it into the bowl and taste as I go, but if you're new to making poke, then you probably want to measure each ingredient out. And lastly, our handy dandy clean kitchen towel. That's it. Now let's go over our ingredients. First, we have the star of the show, the salmon. This is about a pound of Scottish salmon which we get from our vendor. But as I mentioned before, you can find fresh and high quality salmon at many seafood markets. Just make sure it's a trusted and reputable store and also talk to the fishmonger. They should be able to tell you which one's the freshest and safe to consume raw. Next, we have a white onion, and we'll be using about a quarter of this. Now the type of onion is totally up to you. If you want to be more traditional and can find it, then Maui sweet onions are great. But for most of us, we'll probably have to go with something else. I like to use white onion because it's milder and sweeter than regular yellow onions, and I like a little bit of that onion kick. You can also get regular sweet onions, but again, it all just comes down to personal preference. Okay, next we have some green onions. I cut off the very bottom and cleaned this already, but we'll be using about 2 of these. And then we have some ginger root. We're going to peel and then mince this, or you can grate it, whichever one's easier for you. We need about 1 teaspoon of it. Next we have about a half cup of what's called ogo, or also known as limu in Hawaiian. It's basically a type of seaweed that's used in a lot of traditional Hawaiian poke. And you might be able to find this fresh, or something more like this. This is dried ogo, and all you do is just follow the directions on the package. This particular one you let sit in water for about 5 minutes, and then it becomes ready to use. It adds some nice texture and flavor to the poke, but not a big deal if you can't find it. Alright, now let's go over the sauce ingredients. First, I'll show you some shoyu. Sorry, my dad jokes need a bit of work. Anyways, shoyu is just Japanese for soy sauce, and I prefer low sodium. This is a little over a quarter cup. Next, we have some toasted sesame oil, 2 tablespoons of it. And then we have 1 tablespoon of mirin, which is Japanese sweet rice wine. Lastly, some Hawaiian alaya salt, which is traditional Hawaiian red clay sea salt. Now you can use regular sea salt, but let me tell you, this stuff is awesome. I use this for all different types of cooking because it adds so much flavor and you don't even have to use too much. We'll probably only use a couple pinches of it. And I'll leave a link in the description below, but yeah, definitely check this out because it's good stuff. And that's it for the ingredients. Now let's get into actually making our poke. The process of making poke is not hard. You basically chop everything up, add everything to the bowl and mix it. Simple as that. We're going to start off with the salmon. So again, this is about a pound of salmon, maybe a tad bit less. And this one has the skin still on, which we're going to be taking off here. So to make it easier to cut off the skin, I'm going to cut this in half first. Now this of course depends on the size and shape of the fillet you have. Then we slide our knife across the bottom from one end to the other, like this. Just like that. Now do not throw away the skin. You can broil this and make salmon skin rolls or eat it as a snack. It's crispy, flavorful, and perfect with our spicy meal. But yeah, make sure to hold on to these. Okay, now we'll do the same thing for this other piece. And the salmon skin is amazing beer food, by the way. Now it's up to you if you want to take this darker part off. It's totally edible and actually has a lot of flavor and some nice fat content. I usually just leave it on, but it can make the poke look a little bit discolored. So for demonstration and picture purposes, I'll cut it off here. Alright, now we're going to cut this into cubes. And you could go this way or this way, whichever way is easier for you. I'm going to first cut it in half so that I have a smaller piece that's easier to work with. The goal is to get cubes that are about this size. So not quite an inch by an inch, but more so 3/4 inch cubes. And now we just continue cutting the rest into roughly the same size cubes. Alright, once we're done with that, we just transfer it into the bowl and that's it for the salmon. Let's clean our board and move on to the veggies. We'll start off with the white onion. First cut off one of the ends and then cut it in half. Then peel the outer layer and then cut it again in half since we only need a 1/4 onion. Now obviously this will depend on the size of your onion. If you have a tiny little one, then you might want to use half or maybe even the whole thing, and vice versa. So how you chop it from here is up to you. Some people like smaller pieces while others like to leave them big. I like to cut mine into thin strips, so to do that, I first cut it in half down the long way, and then turn it perpendicular to my knife and start dicing, maybe 1/8 of an inch or so. And sometimes you'll see the center of the onion has some green parts like this. I like to take these parts out because it tends to be a bit bitter, especially since we're eating it raw, but they are fine to eat, so it's up to your personal preference. Now we transfer this right into our bowl, and that's pretty much it. Next up, green onions. First you want to cut off the very ends and clean these, which I've already done. From there, basically slice it up as thin as you can. And I like to use the entire thing, including the white part, which can have a bit more of that onion flavor, but I think it adds a nice little kick. Again, totally up to you. So I start off from the white end, but either end is fine. Hold the green onion gently in place and use your knuckle as a guide for the blade. Never bring the blade above the knuckle though. And I like to hold down a bit on the handle while the tip of the blade stays on the cutting board at all times. And then using the lower half of the blade, rock it in sort of a circular motion while your blade stays in contact with your guide finger. Of course, a sharp knife is very important here. Now just continue slicing while slowly moving your guide hand down. And there we go. Into the bowl it goes. Next, we're going to chop up this ogo or limu. And this is super simple. Basically, we just cut the seaweed down a bit so that it's more proportionate with the rest of the ingredients. Maybe down to roughly about a 1/4 inch or so. And once you're done, you guessed it, toss it into the bowl. The last ingredient we put in before our sauce is the ginger. Now you can use pre-grated ginger that comes in these convenient tubes or jars, but if you're using fresh ginger like I am here, then we first need to peel it. Some chefs will use a spoon for this, which is totally fine, but I've always used my knife, so that's what I'm comfortable with. Now if you are using your knife, be very careful and take this slow. And honestly, while peeling this ginger, I realized it wasn't the best quality, but it's the only one I had, and I wasn't about to remake this entire video. I mean, it's not horrible, but hopefully yours is a little bit more fresh. Anyways, once it's fully peeled, we're going to mince this up. How I like to typically do this is to start from one end and cut it into thin slices. And then lay it down so that it's staggered and then slice it up like this. Basically julienne slice them. And then from here, just rotate it and then chop it up again. Now take this and just start mincing. Again, if you don't want to go through the hassle of mincing, you could just grate the ginger down as well. Or better yet, if you really want to keep it simple, just use one that's already grated. Now we only need about a teaspoon, so I cut way too much. But this is preference and you can put in as much as you like. I'm just going to eyeball it here and put in about this much. Maybe a little bit more. How about one more for good measure? Ginger is very healthy. Alright, now the hard part's all done. Next we just have to mix in the sauce. So to start off, this is a little over a quarter cup of shoyu. Again, that's soy sauce. And you can just pour it right on top. Next we have the toasted sesame oil. This is about 2 tablespoons. And lastly, 1 tablespoon of mirin. Now let's mix it a little bit to get the sauce and ingredients all combined. Alright, once the ingredients and sauce is somewhat mixed together evenly, let's add some of that Hawaiian alaya salt. And if you don't have any of this, you can add regular sea salt or just leave it the way it is. We only need about a half teaspoon, but honestly just taste it and see for yourself. I'm going to add a couple pinches here and sprinkle it right on top. And that's all you need. Now we'll mix it again to get that salt all nice and mixed in. Make sure to get all the ingredients from the edges in there. Alright, once that's done, I like to give it a little taste and see if it needs anything else. Nope, tastes good to me. Again, this is a great recipe to use as a foundation, and feel free to adjust the ingredients to your liking. And some other things that you can add in here are masago or tobiko. You can add some garlic if you like, sesame seeds, or some chili flakes to give it some kick. And speaking of kick, our spicy mayo is absolutely amazing with this. I'll add a link to the video over here in this corner. And now that you know how to make the poke, make sure you learn how to properly cook the rice by watching the video on the screen. Thank you as always, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed this video. I'll see you on the next one. ありがとうございます。